Hello, hello. Thank you for coming and checking out my video today. My name is Jennifer and this is Jen the Bookworm. If you're brand new here, welcome. And if you're a repeat offender, I appreciate you very much for coming back. Today, I wanted to wrap up the rest of this month, the rest of this year, and go into the next year, see what we're up against, give you some idea of what I'll be reading. So first, let's do the December wrap-up. I read 7 books, and I read 6.5 books. I am still reading the 7th book, and I believe I will get it finished today. The time of filming this is the 31st, and the time of posting this I hope will also be the 31st. But I'm hoping to finish the book today. If not, then I'll have it done certainly by tomorrow. So this month I started out with The Ninth Reign, which I still have a review that I want to post for The Ninth Reign. I really enjoyed this book. It was by Jen Williams, and I read most of it in November, and I finished it up in December. It was so interesting, the way the world was formed, the magic. It was very, very interesting. And I don't know when I'm going to get to the next 2 books, but I really want to finish up that series. And hopefully I will eventually make some room for that early this year, this next coming year. But I did finish that book. And the next book I did was Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. I loved Mistborn. I was glad because I had heard that it's not I'd heard it's a little rough, and I had started with Stormlight Archive, and this is after he had been writing for many years, and a lot of people said he's corrected what was rough about the first Mistborn book. So when I was going back, I was concerned that I wasn't going to be getting a very good book, comparatively anyway. But I loved the book. It was a great book. I hope to continue on with the Mistborn series also. I liked the characters. I didn't like how long it took me to read, though. I was thinking, because it was only about a 25 hour long book by Audible, that I would be able to get through it quicker than I did. And when middle of the month came around, I'd still only read that and hadn't yet finished it. Finished it very quickly on after that, and moved on to some other books, which thankfully did not take me as long to read. I read Jade City by Fonda Lee, and I really enjoyed Jade City. I thought it was a very fresh new take on a fantasy, but it's very Asian inspired. But also, I don't read a lot of gangster mafia type books. And this was definitely that, but with a fantasy aspect, with a magic aspect. I didn't feel like the magic was it was very prevalent, but I didn't feel like it was very strong. Maybe like The Witcher, where there is magic in the world, but it's not always the first thing that they turn to. I don't know. It's kind of difficult to describe. The people, the warriors in Jade City, they are jade enhanced, and jade has magical properties to it, and a certain race of people can harness that magical properties in jade and enhance their own physical strength or their speed or whatever, and they become sort of super powered as a result of the jade and how much jade they can take, and so on and so forth. And obviously there are people who either can't or don't have jade that want it, and their power structure is all surrounding jade. So jade is very prevalent. It's a very big part of it, but it's not sword and sorcery fantasy. It's not casting a spell every couple of minutes and so on. So it was very interesting. I would say it was kind of low on the magic side, even though it was very prevalent. But it was I thought it was a really good book. I thought it was a really good book. I didn't think it was like, wow, the best thing I'd ever read. Some of the hype, I guess it didn't live up to some of the hype. And maybe it just wasn't going to be able to live up to some of the hype, because some of the hype was pretty out there, pretty big. But I certainly did enjoy it, and I do intend to continue on with the trilogy and possibly even check out other things by this writer. I did really like it. The next thing that I read, I sort of broke my TBR. I wasn't intending to read this. I had a Just Do It December where I was going to start all these series, and I didn't as much as I thought. I did attempt to read Malice by John Gwynne, and it was by no means a bad book. When I say I attempted to read it, I don't want to make it sound like I stopped reading it because I wasn't enjoying it. But it was a book that I felt like I needed to put my eyes on it. I couldn't just do it with audiobook. They were just throwing out too many terms, too many things, that they were introducing too many characters, and I couldn't keep them straight just by audiobook. So I downloaded the book, and I decided I was going to do both. But towards the end of December, I was so busy, I could not sit down to read very much. So it was going to be start Malice and not finish Malice, most likely, and have only like 3.5 books we read for this month, or save Malice for January. And so I decided to save Malice, and I instead moved on to a book that wasn't really even on my radar until recently. I'd been watching going down some rabbit holes on YouTube, like you do. And I was watching some interviews by this author, and I decided to pick up I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I never watched iCarly. I'm a little older than it was too teeny bopper by the time it came out. I was too old for that. And I didn't really know this person. But obviously I've heard of this book. It's been all over the place. And some of the reason why it's been all over the place was how she named the book. And a picture of her on the cover smiling big and holding an urn. And it was just like, what's up with that? It kind of intrigued me a little bit. But I also thought this book could very well be kind of triggering for some of the issues I've had in the past, but I felt compelled, and so I decided to read it. And it was a little bit triggering, but it was also very cathartic and healing, and I really enjoyed reading it as much as one can enjoy listening to somebody talk about the abuses that happened to them in their past. She did interject quite a lot of humor in it, so it wasn't so heavy, but a lot of times when I was like, ooh, oh dear, that's not good. That's not going to work out well. That's not going to end up well. And, it doesn't, obviously. But it was a very moving book. And it was something that I kind of carried with me days after I had read it. And I still thinking about it and processing it. And if a book can hold you days after you finish reading it and started something else, I think that there's some merit to a book that can do that. And so I enjoyed reading the book. I'm glad I read the book. I didn't, as much as you can enjoy, like I said, listening to someone recount abuse. But I'm glad I read it. I feel like I got something out of it. And so I'm happy with that decision. But after I read it, I really needed something not heavy. So I decided to pick up Unsold by Will White. And boy, was that just not what I was expecting. It was so good. I was expecting maybe like a lot of people talk about the Dresden Files, and the Dresden Files are awesome. I really love the Dresden Files, but the first couple of books are problematic. They're just not problematic. I guess I mean to say more that they're not as good as the rest of them. They're rough, especially if you are in like 9, 10, 11, 12. If you go back and read the first 2 books, you're like, ooh, I'm not sure why I moved on to 3. So, and I kind of got the impression that Unsold was like this. It was good, but not as good as maybe later on in the series it gets. I loved it. I was not prepared for how much I liked this book. I consumed it in a day. It was a 1-day listen for me, and I was blown away by the story. I thought that the magic system was interesting. I thought that the characters were interesting. The assumptions that you start out with and how they are broken down as you go. I thought all of that was a great, fun ride. And I immediately picked up the second book, Soulsmith. And I consumed that the very next day in 1 day. And it was like it was a true continuation to the first book. There wasn't like time that had passed or anything like that. It was a true continuation of the first book, almost as if I hadn't switched over to a new book. And it continued to grip my attention and to make me not want to do anything that would interfere with me being able to continue. It was so good. So I consumed that in a whole day as well. And then I took a couple of days break, but I, was on the Grimoire Discord where I go most often to discuss my reading experiences with my like-minded peoples. And, I was basically told these books are like crack and the first 2 are the worst ones. And I'm just like, well, that bodes well for me because... And I agree, they are like crack. Once you start, you don't want to stop. And you could stay up until 3 a.m. reading this thing because you just got to know and you just got to get it done. And it's really good. Now, I think there are 11 books in the series, and I think it's a completed series. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe it's a completed series, 11 books. None of them get very big. The one I'm reading now, Black Flame, I started that yesterday or the day before. That one is about 11 hours long, but they're all within the 8 to 13 hour range. So none of them are huge books. They are small palate cleansing books. However, I intended to use them as palate cleansers, and maybe I'll get around to doing that in the later books. But right now I can't seem to put them down. So right now I'm reading Black Flame, and I'm hoping to get it finished today so that I can start January fresh. I got to put these down though because I've got some big reads coming up in January. So my January TBR, it looks like a very ambitious TBR. It looks big, and I don't know how much I don't know how I'm going to be able to stick to it. If I'm going to be able to stick to it, if I'm going to have to break my TBR, make some changes. And if I do, then I do. But this is the lineup as of now. So first of all, I am joining Joanna and a lot of other people on BookTube in doing a Game of Thrones, a Song of Ice and Fire read along, where we pick a book each month and go down and do the whole series. And I believe we're also doing the new one, the Fire and Blood, and so on as well. But at least the first 5, the 5 books that comprise the whole of the Song of Ice and Fire series until George R. R. Martin finishes the 6th one. We'll see. But so this month, January, is a Game of Thrones. I have read a Game of Thrones before, but it was a long time ago. I read it because I'd started watching the show and I really enjoyed the show, and I'd heard there, obviously in the book, there are things that wouldn't translate as well to film. So I wanted to read it to see what was the difference. What kind of, I feel like the light is flickering a little bit. If there's some flickering in the background, I apologize for that. Anyway, I wanted to read to see what was different and how it was different. And I read the first book and I read half of the second book, and then something got in the way. Life got in the way. And I put down the books and I never picked them back up again. Not because I wasn't enjoying them, not because they weren't good, just because life got in the way. So this is my opportunity to have life not be in the way, to really focus on reading this series, because I've never read most of the series, and I'm excited to do so. So I will start that. That's the next book. I am not moving on past Black Flame. Repeat after me. No more Will White until Game of Thrones is read. So Game of Thrones. And I'll be happy to do that, and I'm looking forward to starting that journey. Plus, there's so many people right now that I know that are also taking that journey, that it's going to be so much fun to discuss and to share, and to just that is going to be so much fun. I had so much fun doing that with Fairy Tale, Stephen King's Fairy Tale, and I'm looking forward to having so much fun doing that with this as well. So that's the first book. Then I do intend to repick up Malice and read it proper, by Malice by John Gwynne. So that's the second book. I really want to read Fireborn by Rosario Mundo. That was on my TBR for December that I did not get to it. So I want to start that series. I've heard a lot of good things about it. And then I'm predicting that Will White will finish out January. So we'll see. It's possible that I'll get burnt out and need to take a break from Will White. Right now I have Skysworn and Ghostwater on the TBR for January. If I feel like I need a break from him, though, there are plenty of other things that I could do. I could finish. I could continue on in the Winnowing Flame series by Jen Williams. I have other series that I could start. So I have places to go, but I know right now where my head is. So I wanted to work that into the TBR. So in hopes that I don't break the TBR too much trying to get some Will White in there. So anyway, that is my TBR for January. That is my wrap up for December. What did you finish in December? How many books did you end up reading in December? That's going to be one of my next videos, is kind of coming up with, I have some graphs and I have some information. I know there's a lot of people who like that kind of thing, about how much I actually read in 2022. And that'll be coming up in January once 2022 is officially ended. But let me know in the comments below, what are you intending to read? Are you going to join the Game of Thrones, the Song of Ice and Fire read along? Are you reading Game of Thrones next month? Are you, have you read everything that you intended to read? Are you playing catch up? Are you starting new things? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this, I would appreciate it if you would give me a like. If you haven't subscribed to me, please consider doing so. It's free to do and it helps out my channel quite a lot. It lets me know that you enjoy watching this kind of content and all the other content that I put out. So with that, that is what I have for you today. And I'm gonna go run and get some reading done. I want to finish up this year so that I can start tomorrow fresh and new. And with that, I hope you have a great rest of your year.